Good morning, it's Thursday and I am off to Oxford to go and see my cystic fibrosis care team there. I don't see them as much as I used to anymore because there's not as much for them to do. Now I've got new lungs and my old lungs aren't constantly failing on me and requiring their assistance. But there are still complications with cystic fibrosis even after transplant, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. So this is Oxford, and you can see that it's a really nice new building, new hospital, and looks gorgeous, which is completely different to how the CF unit actually looks, which you'll see as we go in that the CF unit is in the old bit. It's actually in the part of the hospital where my mum trained as a nurse back in the 70s, and it's definitely not as nice as the bit of the building you can see behind me, but they are getting a new unit soon, which will make a massive difference. So obviously I didn't record a huge amount of footage in the hospital, partially because it's just a very private place, but also because it's just not that interesting in terms of trying to put a blog together. What I do want to talk about though is what transplant does for cystic fibrosis and what it doesn't do for CF. Cystic fibrosis is what's known as a multi-system disorder, so it affects more than just the lungs. The lungs are the most famous piece of cystic fibrosis, and that's because they're the bits that most commonly kill you, and they're what nearly killed me, which is why I was referred for a lung transplant when mine stopped working. But it also affects the pancreas, the bowels, it can affect your liver, it can affect all kinds of different parts of your body. What that means is that people with cystic fibrosis who have transplants don't just have an easy life once you're through the worst part of the transplant itself. Transplantation just swaps one set of problems for another, so as I get older my bones are getting more brittle. I've developed diabetes as a result of the drugs and the regime that I've been put on after my transplant. There's a lot of other complications, and I need to keep a really close eye on my kidneys to make sure that all of the medication that I'm now taking doesn't adversely affect my systems. So what this means is that my cystic fibrosis team are just as important to me as they always have been. I've got a very different relationship with them because I see them less often and they're less involved in my day-to-day care because I'm not constantly fighting the same infections that I had when I was pre-transplant. My lungs, to all intents and purposes, are absolutely fine now. My CF team were such a big part of my life before my transplant. I saw them pretty much every week for the last year before my transplant. And you really do miss them once your transplant has happened and you're no longer going to clinic quite as regularly. So all of my clinic trips now end up being really long because I just hang out and chat with people and catch up on what's been going on because I knew the ins and outs of their lives for so long and they knew the ins and outs of mine. I've always said that I would never change anything that's happened to me in my life because it's made me the person that I am today. And I don't know who I would be had I not been through all of those things. But at the same time, I would never wish the things that I've been through on my worst enemy. No one should have to live with a rapidly deteriorating lung function. No one should have to live with the uncertainty over whether or not they're going to be here this time next year. But people still are, every single day. And that's why Transplant Week is so important. And yes, I'm going on about this in every single vlog because that's the point of vlogging this week, to get you to talk about transplantation and organ donation. So tomorrow I'm going to be answering your questions on transplantation and life with cystic fibrosis and pre and post transplant life, and anything else you want to ask me, to be honest. So I'll put a tweet out a couple of times tomorrow. Follow me at Ollie Lewington, and you can respond. You can make sure you hashtag it with Say I Donate and put something clever like hashtag Ask Ollie on it, and I will collect the answers and answer them in my video tomorrow.